guys like that little segment I threw in, that is Tube from December 31st, 2024, the Gamehen Show at Madison Square Garden. Just in case you were wondering about that little funk jam I threw in at the beginning. But before we start this show, I just want to give a special thanks to my boy Leo for believing in GefiltePhish and helping me with the Jam Band Collective and going to those shows with me a couple weeks ago. That was a great time. Just wanted to start an episode with a special thanks. I'd like to do that every episode, and hopefully we'll get to hear from him soon, kind of on the structure of his Phish experience and his love for the band that's grown over time, and just like watching him grow has been amazing. Just watching your friends grow at Phish concerts and watching their minds be blown by the band is always one of the best things to see. Yeah, but without further ado, I'd like to start this show. So here we go. How's it going, everyone? And welcome to the GefiltePhish Show, a podcast here on Spotify hosted by me, Casey Dittmer, also known as GefiltePhish. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to the show and what we will do on this show and what you can expect from listening to such a great podcast. Let me first give a little introduction of who I am and why I decided to start this show. My name is Casey. I am from Utah, and I'm currently 19 years old. Not very old. I've seen 10 Phish shows in my life, and I was raised by a Phish fan, basically, and I was kind of brought into the culture at a young age, but didn't really earn a respect for it until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and since then it's really, really taken over my life, as Phish usually does for people. The music brings me a lot of joy and love and kind of sense of spirituality. Being raised in the Jewish faith, I feel very connected to Phish, especially because their presence was very heavily associated with my childhood, synagogue, and the people I was raised around in my faith. So that's a big part of Phish's appeal to me as well. I started to understand jamming and kind of jam bands when I was like 16 years old, and my dad took me to a Dead Company concert. He is a huge Deadhead, shout out to him, and a great man. I look up to him a lot, and seeing this music with him really inspired me and kind of brought me a new flavor of music that I hadn't really experienced before. I've always been a very musical person, and music has always been very special to me, but I've always been kind of confused in what to make of music. And I've gone through a ton of phases, from hip-hop to reggae to metal to electronic, and now, of course, jam bands and rock. So when my dad took me to this Dead Company concert, I didn't really know what to expect. I knew the Grateful Dead, I knew some of their music, but I hadn't really dove into the jamming section and, what to do at these shows. So I was with one of my buddies who liked the Grateful Dead as well, mostly studio Grateful Dead, similar to me. And we kind of just went onto the field, and everyone was dancing, and we did not know what to do. And we were very confused by it all. I mean, we knew some of the music they were playing, but, hearing the improvisation and, kind of the magic of jamming, we were just kind of confused and totally dumbfounded by what we were seeing. I had always thought of, Grateful Dead as just like an old rock band, but there was this whole other psychedelic flair to the jamming. And just seeing Shakedown and the people dancing, it changed my life. I started really listening to Dead recordings and really starting to follow the Dead. But I didn't really know what Phish was still. My father went to college in the late 80s and early 1990s on the East Coast near Vermont, and, always talked about Phish, and, he always played songs like Sample in a Jar or Down with Disease and Bouncing Around the Room, Farmhouse, all those songs. My mom and my dad both played them for me and my brother when we were very young. And Bouncing Around the Room was kind of an iconic, fun song. And I remember looking at the little artist photo on iTunes of Phish, and I thought Trey was Ned Schneebly from School of Rock. And that was really entertaining and just really funny to me. And so I was like, Dad, is that the guy from School of Rock? And he's like, no, that's Trey. I just didn't really understand Phish's music because obviously the studio recordings of those songs don't have lengthy jams in them and kind of don't have to do with Phish's actual live music style. And my parents had brought me to concerts when I was a kid. I remember seeing, I think, Dave Matthews Band at a point when I was very young, and tons of bluegrass shows, lots of bluegrass. My mom is a huge bluegrass person. And so I kind of knew about it. I didn't really put the pieces together of jamming. It just sounded like music to me. I've always liked instrumental music. So I very much enjoyed it, but I never seeked it out. It never became a phase for me until later in my life. And my dream career since I was a little kid was to be in a band and be up there playing guitar. I started playing guitar when I was 7 years old, I believe. So it's been around 12 years now, inconsistently. I started off playing AC/DC. I was inspired by AC/DC and Zeppelin and all that stuff. Hendrix. Hendrix was a big one for me. I remember trying to learn Purple Haze and Voodoo Child when I was younger on my little Squire Stratocaster, and it was fun. But I never really studied theory. I went to look at the tabs with a teacher, and the teacher would guide me through the tabs and where to put my fingers, and that would be it. I'd say, oh, I can play this song. I never learned how to sing and play acoustic. I was always electric, learned solos via tab, and call it a day. I did this up until around sixth grade, on and off, just inconsistent music practice. Never really took guitar seriously. And then I went to an arts camp, and there was obviously a lot of Phish played there. It was in New York, so there was a lot of that community. I didn't really put the pieces together with jam banding and kind of that at the time, but I had a friend, and he was very much into like Metallica and all that stuff, and he could shred on guitar. So I'm like, I want to be like that. And ever since then, ever since I was like sixth grade, so I was maybe 11, 12 years old at the time, I couldn't put the guitar down. I've just always been playing. I really got into theory when I started listening to jam bands, 5 years later when I was around 16, 17 years old, and hearing Phish again, not as bouncing around the room, but hearing, going on nugs and just exploring live shows, I was like, dang, Phish is really my style. They're a lot more jazzy. They're a lot more funky. And I prefer that jazz style, being a hip hop fan, over like kind of the Americana Grateful Dead vibe. And I just dove headfirst into Phish. I got live Phish, and I started listening to shows, and it became my all-time dream to see a Phish concert with my dad. And so we went to MSG, and it was a beautiful experience for me, seeing, the Gamehenge run and just seeing all those people unite in New York City at Madison Square Garden was magical. And I will never forget that run of shows. And that will always be where Phish really clicked for me. And I just started spending more money and more money to go to shows. I went to the Sphere, I went to Dick's, I went to Folsom this year, and I finally hit my 10th show. And it's just been a magical ride, and Phish has become part of who I am. All the memories from my childhood, from my parents, from my rabbi as a kid, from the kids in my Hebrew school class, from those summer camps, they all really started to make sense. And the community all started to resonate with me. And I realized that this has been waiting to happen to me since birth. And Phish really is a huge part of me and a huge part of my identity. They mean a lot to me. And, it's kind of weird to idolize a band and just for middle-aged men from the East Coast of the United States so much, but there's something more to it. There's something about listening to that music, and there's something about unlocking those memories from your deep childhood and allowing yourself to kind of explore spiritually around you and really understand music and be inspired by theory, be inspired by what they're doing, and kind of analyze the deeper meaning behind music and instrumentation and improvisation. And it's just a magical thing. Since then, I've introduced some of my best friends to Phish, and a lot of them have come to shows with me. Phish, Goose, Dogs in a Pile. I've taken a lot of friends to jam band shows and really just opened up the community in my state to jam bands, because I feel like Utah is a state that's not very exposed to it very much. So my goal is to get more people into this scene and to really understand this music and, want to go to concerts, have friends to go to concerts with. So I started at my college. I go to the University of Utah, the Jam Band Collective. And what I did with that project is just kind of had an open forum discussion base for jam band fans to all kind of unite and find people to go to shows together. I would coordinate shows for people, and my goal is to make it kind of find an ability to get funding for this community so I can get community tickets to events. And I've even emailed Phish about coming back to Utah. They haven't played since 2003, and I've just met some amazing people, made amazing partnerships with other musicians, especially shout out to the boys in Loom from Salt Lake City. They're a great band, and they're definitely the best that we've got in our state for jam bands, or any band in my opinion. You can check them out at Loom Tunes on Instagram. I highly recommend it. They're a great band, and I will endorse them wholeheartedly, and I've felt very blessed to be partnered with them and experience a lot of their shows and have personal relationships with some of these musicians. And it's just been all a blessing. This entire journey for me has been a huge part of my life and such a blessing to me and who I am. Now, for some people, Phish just has this kind of stereotype of being, a druggy band, a band that people just go and get stoned and giggle and run around and kind of just like vibe to the music. And it is to an extent for a lot of people. It's that experience. But for me, I'm sober. The experience means a lot more to me than just partying. The experience is listening to improvisation, listening to musicianship, and kind of identifying and analyzing these jams, analyzing the lighting, and, loving every minute of what I see. I go just for the music. I don't go really for the partying at all. Maybe when I was younger, I would have chosen that. But now that, I'm still pretty young and, at my age, I would expect to want to party there more. But really, I just need the memories with this band because I cherish them and I don't know how long they're going to last. So why did I start this podcast? Is if I don't already post a lot about Phish on every social media page I have. I just want to share more information on this music and my opinions and kind of what I get out of these shows, personal stories, have some friends on, have some of my Phish friends on, kind of just host and parade around with this entire community and the gifts that it's brought to me. So that's the goal of GefiltePhish, and that's the goal of this project for me, is to just listen to Phish and just talk about it and share some of my experiences, share the stories, talk about the music and hear from other musicians about their music. It's just all an awesome project and an idea that I have. So I hope you guys enjoy. My name is Casey with GefiltePhish, and I'll have a new episode for you guys coming soon on a full jam breakdown of Split Open and Melt at Drum Lagos in Japan, I think from the year 2000. So stay tuned for that. I also have a YouTube channel where I do live action breakdowns. It's just called GefiltePhish on YouTube. I will do the same Split Open and Melt breakdown. I've already done one on Back on the Train from Spring Tour of this year, from April 18th, 2025 at Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, and I've done one on the Reba from Zepp Osaka in 99. So, and I'll also do a ton of other, visual aid videos just to kind of learn about Phish history, and that's a whole other project that's associated with this one. So hopefully you guys can go check that one out too, because I want to do a lot of different things with Phish knowledge and Phish jam banding, kind of just around the community online. So yeah, thanks for listening, you guys, and I hope to see you next time. Peace out.